Just a reminder, when you're done watching the lecture, make sure that you go to the assignments folder and you click on nucleic acids and proteins and you take the quiz. So here's a preview of what is on the quiz. Just to review, there's 4 main classes of macromolecules that make up living things. 2 of them we looked at in the last lecture, carbohydrates and protein and lipids. In this lecture, we'll look at the last 2, nucleic acids and proteins. Both are polymers, which means that they're made of smaller subunits or parts that are all chemically bonded together to make a long chain. Before we get into the structure of nucleic acids, what is a nucleic acid? I'm sure you've heard of at least one of them. DNA is an example of a nucleic acid, and the other kind is RNA. They both store and transmit genetic information from parents to offspring. In other words, it's all the directions to make you, and you got those directions from your parents. There are 3 main differences between DNA and RNA that you should know right now. There's more, but we'll get into those when we study DNA and genetics in more depth. First of all, they have slightly different jobs. DNA contains genes, which are sections that code for proteins. And proteins really make up a lot of who we are and how we function. Proteins make up our skin and muscles, determine our hair and eye color, speed up chemical reactions that break down our food and build new substances that we need, and allow substances to move in and out of cells. So you could say that DNA is like the master blueprint that tells your whole body how to function. RNA is sort of like a helper molecule that takes directions from the DNA and then goes out to the ribosome to make protein. There are 2 differences in the structure of DNA and RNA. DNA is double-stranded. So here's a picture of DNA. And you can see it looks like 2 strands that are wound around each other. And RNA is single-stranded, so just one strand. And DNA contains a sugar called deoxyribose, while RNA contains the sugar ribose. In fact, it's in part of their names. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA stands for ribonucleic acid. Nucleic acids are polymers, so they're made of smaller parts. Just like you learned that monosaccharides are the monomers that join together to make a carbohydrate polymer, the monomers that join together to make a nucleic acid are called nucleotides. The monomer and polymer are easy to remember because they start with the same 4 letters. On the right side is a picture of a nucleic acid with each of the 3 parts highlighted in a different color. The middle part that's highlighted in purple, this is the sugar. So this is deoxyribose because this is a DNA molecule. Here's another picture of a nucleotide with the 3 parts labeled. It contains a phosphate group, a sugar molecule that has 5 carbons, and a nitrogen base. The phosphate of one nucleotide bonds to the sugar of another nucleotide, creating a long chain with the nitrogen bases sticking out in the middle. Proteins, you already know, are made of smaller parts called amino acids. A chain of amino acids bonded together is called a polypeptide. Some proteins are made of just one polypeptide chain, while others, like the one in the picture, are made of several polypeptide chains wound together. Just like nucleotides are made of specific parts, so are amino acids. Every amino acid starts out with a carbon atom in the center, with 3 things sticking out of it: a hydrogen atom, an amino group, a carboxyl group, and then something else. The last part that's bonded to the carbon could be a variety of different atoms or molecules like you see in the illustration below. Notice the carbon in the center with the same 3 groups surrounding it. And on the 4th side, the group is highlighted in white. This group is different in every amino acid and allows it to bind to different types of molecules. When 2 amino acids bind together, the amino group of one amino acid and the carboxyl group of another amino acid come together. So when they come together, 2 things happen. First of all, water is formed, and second of all, peptide bond forms between the two amino acids. Proteins are really important molecules because they have such a wide variety of functions. You already know that they build and repair skin and muscle, and that they speed up chemical reactions. A protein that speeds up a chemical reaction is called an enzyme. And there are three other functions that proteins have as well. They can form structures that physically move an entire cell, like the tail on a sperm or the little hairs on a single-celled organism that move back and forth to make it swim. They also allow substances to move through the cell membrane, and they act as name tags on a cell, so the rest of the cells in the body recognize it as belonging to the same body. This way, cells without specific protein markers can be attacked by the immune system. This is why it's dangerous to get a blood transfusion with the wrong type of blood. Your body will not recognize the proteins on the outside and will attack the new blood cells. Finally, it forms channels that allow substances to move in and out of the cell. The shape of a protein is really important. To help speed up a chemical reaction, that protein has to be the right shape to bind to the reactants. And when they act as name tags, it's really their shape that other cells recognize because they're part of the same body, or they don't recognize and attack if it's part of a different body. And its shape also allows specific substances to move in and out of cells. Only a specific channel will allow a specific substance to move in and out of it. And proteins have 4 levels of shapes. So as I talk about them on the next slide, jot down what each of these 4 levels of shape mean. Primary structure is the order of amino acids. The type of amino acid will control how that strand folds into either a helix, which is sort of this twisty shape, or a pleated sheet. So these are called secondary structures, and these shapes are in blue. The tertiary structure describes how the different parts of a polypeptide chain are folded into the helices, and pleated sheets are all folded together to make the polypeptide. So you can see that there's a helix right here and pleated sheets over here, and how that whole polypeptide chain folds together. And finally, quaternary structure means how different polypeptide chains fold together. Because some proteins are just one polypeptide, not every protein has quaternary structure.